Daisy, Charity, and Benji.
Well done. You want to take a few where you are and get your breath back. Well done, Sarah, and all your dancers. Can I ask a quick question before I make any comments?
Sure.
Did you approach this with an old school mentality of a choreographer where I say what you do, blah, 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 blah? Or were there set tasks and you very much were your collaborators? Collaborators, okay. I thought so looking at it, but I thought I'd ask before making any comments. So thank you very much, Sarah, and collaborators. It's always quite epic to make a full-scale piece, you know, I mean, with this amount of people in.
I just want to say, because I saw that piece in Perth, in
Yes.
the student show, student works, and so like just the question of the collaboration, because this is not the original cast, or some Benji replaced some, and so the story was actually exchanged, or so they so really working with the dancers and then material to it, so it was clear.
Oh, that's great. How long did it take you to make this work?
The original piece or this development?
Well, I guess a bit of both, really.
Okay, so for the student work season, we start developing an idea on first year's early semester 1, and then with a discussion with the other choreographers in our year group, we then decide everyone in the department who's involved. So how many weeks would you say we actually had for classes? It was more than 6 weeks.
We had 6 weeks in the first, second semester, and then 4 weeks leading up to the 4 weeks of penalty.
But not full time though, right?
No, not
For
that.
2 hours.
2 hours a week, so 2 hours a week for 6 weeks, then 2 hours a week for 4. I was just asking that so it gives the audience a sense of how long they actually had to make a good work, which is not very long, is it? It's not long at all.
In terms of this development, so what we showed there was actually a development / an excerpt of what the original piece was. The original piece actually has another section after what you saw.
After this piece here,
Yes.
when Daisy finishes?
Yes, so there was actually another section after that. But because I was working with a different cast, and I want to thank them because we only had 2 weeks to really put it together. They were just amazing to work with. So as I was saying, like it was more of a collaboration between my dancers, and so because my original cast that I had in the Dolphin season consisted of students from the other year groups. So this is using dancers from my original.
Yeah, fantastic. And it's good to see, I mean, all of these guys, your collaborators, I presume you set the choices though of how you were going to work and process in terms of wanting to use stories and explore text and movement and individual story coupled with how that sort of played out or as a metaphor for how the group sets it. Is that your direction?
Yes.
Yes, so it was very clear.
As I said, so I had seen it before, and I hope I'm not offending anyone, but it was my personal favourite of the evening, so I'm really glad to get to see it again. And I had this question, is this an excerpt? Because I couldn't remember the ending like that. So I just think it's so intriguing, the world that it creates, and it's so layered, and the choreographically, in terms of the relationships of the, what do we want to call them, characters, the use of text as well, that's very difficult to sometimes integrate, and hard on the brain. And I can't remember, was that always a recorded? No, so that was live as well. Yeah.
I can't imagine you trying to talk while doing that. So yeah.
And I just think it's really original, and the use of space and the development. So I like that there is some obscurity to it. It's like it's not quite clear what's going on, but there seems to be an inner logic to that. It's almost like a bit of a the dream logic. Somehow it's clear but not, and that is quite difficult to pull off successfully. And yeah, I really
I'm just going to open it up to our esteemed audience members. Would anyone like to make a comment or an observation or a question, either for Sarah or for her collaborators?
My interpretation was it was kind of a beautiful reflection of the Facebook era. Like I saw these identities trying to survive and work together, and very personal identities intertwined. So it'd be really interesting as well to explore the opposite. Like what is it like to, just if you want to, because that feels so strong, how you all have your own personality and it fits into this work. And it's almost like you're trying to, this thing of like someone's in my way and get out of my way, it's like, you know, I have more Facebook friends than you. This is my kind of, what's the opposite of this? And I'm not saying it's harmony or it's non-identity or it's North Korea, you know, I don't know, but to me that would be really interesting as well.
So that's what it's emoted for you in terms of pushing out the way and a sort of online identity or sense of self, whereas I was just thinking about the whole New York setup and the business of New York and life and pace. But I guess it brings different thoughts out for different people. What would have been the section after it? If we'd seen the section after, what is the section that normally comes after where Daisy finishes?
So as I've mentioned in the description, the work was inspired by, well, not so much, inspired isn't the wrong word, but motivated by my grandmother lived with Alzheimer's for about 15 years. And so it was based on that idea between just the varying criminal relationships and how that kind of shaped and reshaped itself as a condition got worse. So what I did was originally, towards the beginning, there was actually a duo which represented the idea of my father taking care of my grandmother when she got older. And then the last section actually showed the reverse of that, so the idea of when my father was younger and my grandmother actually being his mother, basically. And so I guess that was a really tricky thing about figuring out what to do with this showing, because I really felt that section was really important to have to the end, because it has such a variation of emotions that goes through the work. It almost needed a way to kind of settle it as opposed to leaving it on such an extreme scale. So I guess it was that idea of just and I think it was almost a realization for me as well too after my grandmother passed away, that idea that it's not really about necessarily remembering the really hard time, the difficult times, particularly for my dad when he was feeding Gran at the nursing home, is that idea of remembering her influence on him as well as myself and my siblings.
The whole spectrum, all the years.
Yeah, I think so. Like not knowing that as a background, but so the whole spectrum of human emotions and relationships. So how that is played out, I find that very strong, because yes, there is moments of competition and pushing each other out of the way, but then there's also this support of the group within the group. You know, there's a sense of alienation towards the end, for example, so everyone just stepping back. And I think there's such richness in all these different states, emotional states that are being explored, and how they switch, and which I think adds to this intriguing feeling that I was talking about.
And I guess when you're saying also about the clear and not clear and ambiguous and really clear, it comes to your point about exploring the Alzheimer's, I guess.
And the shift between,
between
those relationships and the reversal of it.
I feel very rude on my back to you. Any other last comments for Sarah and her collaborators or questions?
I don't know exactly how to describe what I want to say, but it's along this line of how it shifted. It took us on a journey through different emotions through the journey, but also it was so interesting how you played with like almost the reality of it, of how it affected you or your experience with that, but then this kind of like picture book story type thing, like this kind of like characters, or I got like picture book or something, like you were reading a book and it's happening to you and you're experiencing this journey, but it's not really happening to you, like you put it on a page. So yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but I really loved how it snapped in and out of this really realistic kind of tangible experience, but then picture book.
Does that resonate with you?
Yeah.
Lisa?
Yeah.
I don't
makes
know.
sense. It's actually a really interesting perspective, but
I'll keep
it's a really nice
thinking
way to
about what I mean.
I can see what you mean, but it's also interesting that quite a few people have said the idea of characters, and I guess while I did mention that the duo was about the idea of my grandmother and my father, I never really had the idea of per se characters. It was more so of, I guess you could say, key ideas or key thoughts in terms of remembering what sort of emotional stuff, or I guess what sort of events happened and how relationships shifted in our family, but I never specifically got like pinpointed, having any of these guys necessarily represent a specific
No,
genre.
not specific.
That just kind of evolved out of
Just
itself.
came out of the whole process,
Yeah.
because it's very strong of whether they represent someone from your specific circumstances or just almost characters in themselves that represent a particular emotion or state or journey. And it's a strength of the work.
I didn't see characters at all. I saw networks of memory tracings. And those pathways, you could have been 6 neurons in the same brain, firing different patterns. I really do think it's great.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. To me, it was like in that fracture,
Yeah.
and they were sort of discordant, and then it had come back together, and it was like sometimes the picture would be jumbled, and then it would be right, and it was really like in and out of focus, but like it was fractured and then clear.
I'm glad
by
that
themselves.
I'm actually glad that I didn't know that your motivation or inspiration behind this work was your grandmother's condition, because I think the emotions and the feelings that I went through would have been as close as an experience that I would get to having something like Alzheimer's, because there would be moments of clarity and everything's normal, and then there'll be glitches, and then there'll be chaos, and I felt quite sort of disjointed at times, and then I go, oh yeah, that makes sense, and then be really confused as well. So I think you portrayed that really well, and I didn't even know that that's what I was experiencing. So yeah.
And that I think is a sophistication in the treatment of that, to not go too literal and try and convey the motivation, that it's a motivation, it's not about that. And so some of what we said is exactly what you're just saying about the talk about the ambiguity, the clarity, and the obscurity. To translate it into an exploration of that, is really, really interesting. And it's interesting what you're saying about the characters, because earlier when I spoke, I said characters, and then afterwards I said,
It's not the word you meant, but
stories.
Stories.
Of personalities, or identities, or even more abstract than that. That is actually it's too specific for something that is as ambiguous as the fabric.
Thank you very much.
We have a late entrance that's not on the program, and it's Daisy. Daisy has a short dance documentary, which is going to move to the other studio